So we're talking to you, gold parents, about these 4 temperaments, children that are in your world. And you might have one, more, or all of these different temperaments, depending on how many children you have. But the reality is as a gold parent, there's a style that you have that will work with some and definitely won't work with others. So let's discover what those are and talk about some of the great things you can do to help build those relationships and some of the things you really need to watch out for. All right, let's start off, gold parent. Very first child that you're going to have a wonderful relationship with is your gold children. I had a friend of mine that was a high gold, and she had a child that was a high gold, and literally you would have thought, I mean, she just was in heaven with that child. And no matter what she was trying to do, that child was there to support her. She needed somebody to follow through with the project. She turned it over. She had 100% confidence that that child will always do. Get into teenage years, interesting enough, the greens kind of go wacky in their teenage years, kind of go off on their own, try to be weird, dye their hair black, do all kinds of weird things like that. The orange children kind of go weird in their teenage years, trying to separate from this whole, parent thing. Blue children kind of just get kind of lost in these teenage years. They're trying to find themselves. But the golds, they're not lost. They know where they're going. They know how they're going to get there. And so the gold parent loves those children because that's what they would do. They have a plan for grades. They have a plan for college. And so the relationship between the gold parent and the gold child is a great relationship because they help each other in achieving the goals and the dreams that they both have, right? So that's a great relationship. The watch out, though, that you got to watch out for is that when the two of them come and bump up against each other on who's in charge. See, as a teenager, a gold teenager feels like they can be in charge and run something just as well as the parent can run it. And a gold parent, the thing about golds is they're very traditional and they put themselves in these roles. And so I'm in this role of parent and you're in the role of teenager, and each of those have very specific responsibilities. And the gold parent is really big on that, whereas the gold teenager, not so much. And so that's where the conflict comes. As long as we're working on things and we each have our own responsibilities, we're fine. But as soon as you as the gold parent kind of stand up and say, okay, I'm in charge now, you're going to do what I say, now the gold child begins to say, wait a second, I don't want to be part of this. So good in interacting with each other could become a real problem when there has to be control, because golds don't like to be controlled. And even though I'm the parent, your responsibility as a child is to do the things that I tell you to do. So those are some things to watch out for, golds. Again, you love those kids, probably maybe even better than some of your other kids if we were going to just put that, throw that out there. But then you also can have some major conflicts with them. So how about the gold parent with the orange kid? Exact opposites. I mean, just last week I was with a family and the mom thought she had, they'd been using this for several years. They'd gone through this 4 lenses and they'd kind of lost track of it. And so I was there talking to them again and we broke it out but her kids were all little it was probably almost 10 years ago when their children were little. And she pretty much said, these children are all, I know who they are and what they are. Now they're all teenagers. And she's having these conflicts with these teenagers. So we did this assessment again and the teenagers all did it. And she for sure thought that this one child that she had was an absolute gold as a child, and now as a teenager had emerged as an orange. And for the first, she's like, oh my gosh, that's why we're having such a problem right now. That she didn't have any problems with this child up until she became a teenager, and as a teenager, and then as an orange teenager on top of that, she started just going, I'm not playing this game anymore, Mom. And they were having all of these conflicts. And it was almost, I remember the look on her face when the daughter turned over her thing and said she was tested as an orange. The mom just kind of had this look of like, I've just lost a child. I mean, it really was this look like, I don't even know this kid anymore, right? She's not who I thought she was. Then after the shock of that, the next day we got up and talked about it, and then now I can start realizing, even the daughter started realizing, so now how do we move forward, right? So complete opposites, right? They don't have the same value systems. There's nothing I want order and structure as a gold parent, and I want no order and structure as an orange kid, right? Especially orange teenagers. So how do we bridge that gap? Back to everything I've talked about, maturity is the key in this sense, that I have to understand that things aren't going to be done the way I want them to be done. That's a low mature perspective. Things can still be done, but give them the freedom to do it. But then hold them accountable to the consequences, right? That's the key in this whole so I can learn to grow and mature as an orange child, and I can learn to grow and mature as a gold parent. A lot of conflict there. But the key to be successful in that is to understand now what's going on, why the conflict exists, and what can I do as a parent to mature to minimize the conflict, to build the relationship. All right, now, gold parent, green child. Boy, let me just tell you this. I'm just going to go right to the watch outs for you gold parents. Don't try to control them. Don't try to give them systems and processes that they have to, they won't do that. The thing about, let me give you an example here of one of my green sons. He came up from school, he had an F in his math paper, he had his test. And I said, you got an F in this math paper? He says, yeah, because the teacher's an idiot. And I'm like, well, okay, first off, you got an F on your paper, and how is the teacher an idiot? I didn't understand that. What he was really saying is that he had no respect for the teacher, because here's what happened. On his test, he had 100% of the answers were correct. 100%. He had an A. He had an F because he didn't show his work. His teacher was a high gold teacher, and because he didn't show his work, he gave. And so in his case, so she's an idiot. So I'm like, so how does this play out in parenting? Same kind of thing. There's not necessarily this recognition that you're this parent anymore by the time I become a teenager. I'm becoming independent of you. I'm growing on my own. I'm learning on my own. In fact, I've probably been learning on my own my whole life. And I'm just now expressing that. And so as a green teenager, I'm like, I'm just not playing this game anymore. And they don't. Whereas an orange might say, I'm not playing this game anymore, but still then end up playing the game. Or a blue might say, I'm not playing the game anymore, but they'll play the game, and the same thing with the gold. The green's like, if I'm not playing the game anymore, I'm just not playing. So what do? How do you deal with that? Well, first, honor and recognize them for who they are, and understand that about them, and begin to include them in on decisions, include them in on laying out the processes, include them in on laying out the consequences. What I was able to do with one of my green sons is we sit down and say, okay, here's what I'm not happy with. Here's what I want. What is it that you want? And he said, well, here's what I want, Dad. I'm like, okay, well, you want this, I want this. How do we get there? And we talked about it. He had some great ideas, things I hadn't even thought about before, because that's what greens do. He threw those ideas up. We played through those ideas. We said, okay, put a plan in place. And then now I said, this is where the gold parent came out. Now, if you don't do this, what will be the consequence that you choose? And he had to sit there and think about it. And when he determined the consequence, what was nice about that is that who was in control? He was. As a gold parent, I want to be in control. With green children, green teenagers, you got to let them be in control. So we laid out the plan, we laid out what the consequence was, and then I only became, as the parent now, when it didn't happen the way it was supposed to happen, I moved in and enforced what? I moved in and enforced his consequence, not my consequence. Big, big difference. So that's how you can really work effectively with a green teenager as a parent, is engage them in what is it we're trying to do, get their ideas, put the plan together. Love that as a goal. We now have a plan. What will be the consequence? You get to choose the consequence, son. He chooses the consequence. And now I get to do what I do best as a gold, is just hold him accountable. So I'm winning and he's winning in that whole process. So that's how you can best parent a green child if you happen to have a high gold preference. All right, gold parents. Last one we're going to talk about now is the blue child. Now you have to really be careful, because the blue child is sitting there, they're wanting to please you like they want to please everybody. So you'll find that a blue child a lot of times looks and behaves a lot like a gold when they're really not. Well, why would they do that? Because they want to love you, and how they love you is by doing gold things, because they know that's what you like. So you have to be really careful, because I see gold parents take that to a real extreme, right? They work with these blue children, these blue teenagers that are only trying to please, and they might even sometimes, some way I kind of think they take advantage of that. Not knowing, I think not intentional. But the blue child will never say no to the parent. The blue teenager will just say, no, can you help me with this? Oh, I'd love to help you with this. So that's the thing you got to watch out for, is that you could get to the point where then at some point in time, this is what I know about the blue temperament. Again, we're talking about maturity, but at some point in time, the blue temperament says enough's enough. And there is a point. It's way, way, way above all the rest of our points, because they value that relationship so much. But at some point in time, and if you reach that with a blue teenager, then you're going to be out of luck for a while. So be aware of that just, don't take advantage of them just because they say yes and they want to please you. So what can you do to be effective with that blue child? So I would say this, as a gold parent, you wanting to get things done, a lot of times you could be focused more on the process than you are on the human, that blue child. And so as you're working through this process-oriented mindset of life, make sure you take time to recognize that blue human and spend time, have great conversations as you're as you're knocking off your checklists. Make sure you don't lose the human connection, because that's how you stay connected through the teenage years with that blue child, is that you can still work through and have checklists and get things done, but don't make that the number one with the blue child. Make the relationship the most important thing. And then when you do have conflict, when you do have struggles, you'll have that foundation built of that relationship, and it just makes it so much easier to work through any of these struggles with any of these children, because you've taken time to value them and understand them, and now trying to help them to be successful. So where do we go? What do you do? For me, this has been a great resource for me as a parent to help me to understand each of those unique temperaments. There's a chapter here on youth. There's a chapter here on teenagers. There's a chapter here on just about anything that's important in your life that has helped me. And so whenever I have questions, I come here, and I would like to give you a free copy of this book. So click below, get your free copy sent to you today, and begin your journey on helping us put the human back into humanity. And oh, by the way, there's lots of checklists in here to help you as a gold parent.